So, do you ever find yourself wanting to try out some of the, I guess, bigger desktops or bigger application suites? Because you said you're on DWM.
Yeah, yeah,
Have you ever
of course.
felt like maybe a KDE would also be something nice to try or something else like that?
Yeah, like for me, it's kind of like a hobby to try new things
Mhm,
out there and so on. And I would also like to see how it feels to have this full desktop environments
mhm,
and so on. But like right now, I don't see any need for it. So like I might postpone this task for a while.
mhm, mhm. Because
But it's not something bad at all.
when I started using Linux, I started on i3. Then I tried
Yeah, yeah,
BSPWM, and then I did Awesome WM. And BSPWM especially is a really big learning experience because for anyone who doesn't know, that is basically as bare bones of a window manager as you can get because by default it doesn't generate a config. So you launch it and you have a black screen. That is all. No key bindings, nothing at all. You open it and then you swap TTYs and then you kill the window manager and you start writing a config.
yeah. Like I recently helped my friend installing like Ubuntu or so, and there was some problem regarding the display manager, and for some reason it would stack in a loop and so, and he would get confused what the hell was happening or so, and we would like I told him to press Control Alt F2 stuff like that, and just delete the GNOME desktop display manager with LightDM or stuff like that. Like even Ubuntu has this kind of problems. So yeah,
I've never I know if you're using a laptop, it's a good idea to have a display manager because you want to be able to lock your system. But for my desktop computer, I have never had a reason to run a display manager. I just, when I want to start my system, I log in from the TTY and I just have a script that will automatically
yeah.
start whatever desktop I want to be on.
I would also would write start X and it would use my configuration in X init RC file.
Mhm.
Like I don't know how it's done in Wayland because I haven't used it, but
Usually,
yeah,
you just run the binary for the desktop itself. Sometimes with a desktop environment, because there's a lot of other things you want to start, it'll usually require some general startup script. But if we're talking something like Sway or Hyperland, you just run Hyperland and Hyperland starts. And then
yeah,
in the Hyperland config, that's where you usually start up the rest of the stuff, like the portal or if you want a bar or other things like that.
yeah. I mean that makes sense.
So it
By the way,
basically acts like StartX. It's just done in a different location.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I understood. By the way, like I'm asking this because I don't know. Like, why did you decide to switch to Wayland? Like, would you recommend it to me? Like,
So there's a couple of reasons why. The main reason is Wayland right now is just the new and exciting thing, and I kind of want
yeah,
to see it as it goes. When I first started using Wayland, it was very shortly after screen capturing became possible with OBS. So a couple of years ago at this point. Because before that point, if you wanted to screen capture, you there were tools for it, but there were specific smaller tools. I capture everything with OBS because it just makes it easier to edit things. As like I don't need to move my camera in a video editor. I can just do it by changing the scene in OBS. It just makes the process a lot easier. Um, but I basically just want to be here as things are improving and be able
yeah,
to experience them as they happen, basically, rather than just reading about, oh, this has been added and that has been added. I want to be here as they're added and basically just, you know, if something is wrong, hopefully be able to point out where something's gone wrong as well. And besides that, I would have struggled to recommend Wayland to people maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's in a very different state now, and it's gonna depend on your specific use case. If you're someone who very much relies on screen readers and hotkey daemons and tools like that, right now it's still in a very, very rough state. You can, on things like
I see.
Hyperland, there are workarounds for stuff, especially when it comes to hotkey daemons. But no, it's not perfect. For my use case, I don't have a reason to go back to Xorg. Everything that I want to do works perfectly under Wayland at this point. Now, that could
Yeah,
be... Granted, that could also be that maybe my position is kind of biased because I want Wayland to be a good experience, so I avoid things where they could be possibly causing issues, but at least up until this point, I haven't experienced anything in quite a while where I've really felt the desire to go back to X11.
I see. Like for me, like the only concern that I have about X is that people sometimes tell that Wayland is going to kill it and stuff like that. Like it's being outdated or it's not being maintained and stuff like that. But other than that, like right now it gets the work done for me, and like that's the main reason I use it. But I may switch into Wayland in the future as well, like if things stop working for me
Mhm.
in X. Like this is the kind of mindset I have right now. But there is also this aspect of, like you have mentioned, experiencing things as they develop. Like it kind of teaches you other things as well, like seeing the things like from first eye is very different from reading, like
Mhm.
you have said. So maybe like if the feeling kicks in, maybe I just dump X and Vela. It's just a matter of like a uh, sudden rise in how I feel or stuff like that.
Well, I don't expect it's in kind of a weird state because I do expect the distros like Fedora and Ubuntu to completely drop X11 as a package or Xorg as a package
Yeah,
relatively shortly. I know from some insider discussion, from some things they've hinted at, Ubuntu really wants to get rid of Xorg from their repos. And KDE and GNOME are kind of in a good state for that, but right now the smaller desktops like Cinnamon and i3 and things like that, XSC is another example, they kind of are holding it back. So they're kind of being pushed along to hurry up with their Wayland stuff. I would expect the big desktops like KDE and GNOME probably within, I would say within 3 years to, if not completely drop X11 support, very much discourage it, put it behind a compilation option so it's just not going to be enabled by default. And when that happens, then I would expect, especially Fedora, because they tend to do things fairly quickly, to end up dropping it as well, or if not completely removing it, moving it over to their third-party repos. As for Arch Linux, though, and Gentoo, and things like that, and NixOS in that camp as well, whilst they might move fairly quickly, they also don't tend to get rid of things fairly quickly. So, Xorg's probably going to be around in the repos for a long time, because I don't expect Arch to drop DWM from the repos, or I guess you probably want to install DWM by compiling it, but i3 from the repos, or AwesomeWM from the repos. And even if it does happen, right, it's still going to be on the AUR, and we're not going to be in a position where there's legitimate problems running Xorg, at least at least for the foreseeable future, we will get to a point where there's less interest in fixing it as bugs are discovered. But if you're comfortable on Xorg right now, there's no major rush to leave it. Unless you're on GNOME and KDE, where there is actually an impending removal of Xorg support.
So like it seems like for me the main motivator to try Wayland would be to try something like Hyperland or so, but like other than that, like I guess it's fine for me. Like as of now.
Well, you can always try it, and if you're not
yeah.
happy with it, you can just delete the package.
Yeah, of course. Like with NixOS, it's especially like easier, I guess, to try new stuff like that. Because there is this single source of truth, kind of a layers thing between your system and you, and like it's just as easy as to remove some lines of configuration so that your environment is not cluttered and stuff like that.